Hi there. In this lecture we see Capablanca playing against Rudolf Spielmann. So Spielmann is known as a romantic attacking style player of the romantic school of chess. And this is a very interesting encounter indeed. So this is 1911 San Sebastian tournament round 12. d4 from Capablanca, we have d5. And we have knight f3. c5, and Capablanca actually plays a systems opening, the Cole system, c3. He's not really interested in theory with c4, and this is a solid, reliable setup. Why not? Capablanca's focus is on the end games, and also he's very sharp in the middle game, of course. So he's not really interested in opening theory. If he can play a system and get a decent enough position, then why not? We see knight f6, and now e3. So here we see knight c6. Now here there's a very discerning point. The Cole system is the setup with bishop d3. And in fact, Capablanca is alert here, even in the opening, to try and get an advantage. Against this particular move order, the only way for an advantage is what Capablanca actually played. He plays very, very accurately. Like a computer here, d takes c5, and this is in the opening. So this idea that Capablanca is only interested in the end games is not true. He's brilliant at the middle game, but he's also good at the opening. This is the way forward. If bishop d3, which is a classic Cole setup, then bishop g4, and for example here, black's bishop is outside of the pawn chain, and white really is on the back foot here. Black's just got a small edge. It'll be very difficult to get anything from this. The way it's played, this is like a reverse Slav. In the Slav, when a pawn is grabbed, and then it can actually be supported because of c3, there is actually support for b4 quite often. So we see e5 is a bit like a reverse Slav, and we see b4. This looks as though, on the surface, is this greedy? How is it actually punishable? And I've been on the black side against GM sometimes, and this is very, very uncomfortable for black in general. We see queen c7. The queen is poised for later hitting the soft spot h2. If b6, this undermining operation is just totally inappropriate here. White plays queen a4, and then can play b5, and then c6, and then, black's getting kind of crushed. Bishop a3 gets rid of the bad bishop. White's getting a big advantage there. So queen c7, it's a gambit. Black has essentially played a gambit. We have bishop b2, bishop e6, knight bd2, bishop e7. White is fully prepared for e4 to use the d4 square. So we have bishop e2, black castles. White does castle here, rook ad8, queen c2, bishop g4. And now here, maybe a slight inaccuracy, in fact. It kind of feeds black's attacking potential, this next move Capablanca played, which is e4. Maybe more accurate is bishop b5, following a kind of dart square strategy to try and put more pressure on the dart squares. So for example, e4, knight d4, this position is absolutely fine. In fact, if black has to play a move like h5 to justify things, that's a sign of trouble. So h5, white can hit the pawn chain, and this is just horrendous for black. Black's actually on a big back foot here. This position is just glorious for white, a transformation indeed. If we look at this again, this situation, if bishop d7, just f takes e4, just undermining white is undermining the pawn chain. The only move is bishop d6. This works with h5. This is crazy stuff, but it might be the only way to kind of nearly equalize. With this knight takes g4 here, h takes. This situation, things get really crazy, but potentially it's pretty dangerous. There's pyrotechnics trying to get queen h4 mating, but say white exchanges off the queens. This ends up with a position which is about equal. So that's absolutely crazy stuff, but it just shows actually bishop b5 is very, very dangerous here. But e4 is played. The problem with this move, with this e4 move, black gets to use some more resources for the attack here. After knight takes e4, queen takes e4, f5. There's rook lifts, there's pawn mobility. Black's actually getting quite a bit of compensation here. Capablanca plays queen c4 check. Queen c2 again might be more accurate. If e4, knight d4, this situation, it should be, you know, an advantage for white. But with queen c4 check, there are some dangers here after rook a1, e4. So the queen is now glaring at h2. The pawn is, you know, potentially playing also e3 later. There's also knight e5. There's also potential rook lifts. This bishop's still asleep. So this is a very interesting position. We have knight d4. Rook takes d8 again might be a little bit more accurate for taking off one pair of rooks, moving the rook from f8. This might be a more accurate way to play it and is afforded by the position with the bishop on b2. That is actually a small edge, but knight d4 was played here. And now knight e5 with tempo on the queen, so it's casting some doubt on this queen c4. So this is a very interesting position. Instead of knight e5, this seems very logical. If bishop takes e2, queen takes e2, this is just going to be nice for white. Yeah, so that doesn't do anything. So knight e5 is the key idea. And also, if knight takes e2, again, knight e5 there, you know, f4 is a vicious kind of attack. You can see the rook, you know, blasting through. The f file is dangerous. This is a very dangerous position for white. Indeed, there's dynamic potential here. For example, h5, bishop g5, trying to lift the blockade, and black's got the d file. You know, this kind of thing is even. And if taking here e3 check, you can see the dynamics creeping into the position. It gets to be quite crushing with the pawn. So there's a lot of dynamic potential there, but knight e5 straight away is interesting. Queen b3, bishop takes e2, knight takes e2, knight g4. So the threat here is queen takes h2 mate. And we have knight g3 being played. If g3, which is maybe slightly more accurate again, there's a rook takes, maybe queen c6 to try and get to h6. So this situation, if bishop c1 is needed, here this gets to be an advantage for white. You can see that, yeah, there are resources for white. And on queen c6, instead of queen c6, if e3, f3, that should be fine for white. So anyway, knight g4, and we have the move knight g3 being played. So there are lots of exciting options for black. Black does have a dynamic, aggressive position. Black is a, you know, aggressive tactical player. And here, it seems, you know, f4 is quite committal. It does kind of encourage, you know, some sharpness, but there is also e3. Before we look at f4, e3 is a very dangerous option for black. I mean, what does white actually do here? If f takes, knight takes e3, and say a pair of rooks come off, this position, knight g4, and here, you know, this is only an even position. Black does have attacking prospects. White has to tread really carefully. If we look at this e3 again, if f takes, if rook takes, instead of knight takes e3, rook takes, actually bishop h4 is dangerous. And again, we see some dynamic attacking potential. So this situation, black actually has a small edge overall. Yeah, the bishop is a little bit still asleep on b2. So it's very, very interesting. But f4 was played. And we have a pair of rooks coming off. Rook takes d8. So this is important to get the rook off, try and get the rook off at f8. If knight e2, then f3. This doesn't really help matters at all. If white wants to play like this, white's going to get it. For example, here, rook takes d1. You can see this is devastating, actually, this position. Because rook takes f2 check is a crushing tactic. Knight e3 check, knight takes d1. Yeah, this is very, very horrible. So if queen takes d1 is forced, rook takes f2. But if rook takes d1, rather, if rook takes d1, then rook takes f2 check, queen f4. And this is just devastating. Rook takes h2. Yeah, this is absolutely a crushing position for black to have. So, okay, so Capablanca's trying to calm the waters down. Rook takes d8, rook takes d8, and now queen e6 is played. It is possible here, now that the rook's gone from f8, it seems knight takes e4 is actually plausible. f3, okay, threatens mate. We go back to g3, f takes rook d1, and actually this should be even. But queen e6 was played. F takes g3. Queen takes g4, and here is the crunch time mistake, it seems. Black was at least okay, actually, but here in this position kind of makes a mistake. G takes h2 check. This does seem a big turning point of the game. I do think it's important to outline the theoretical turning points because we want to improve our chess with the truth. The truth is, Black was kind of fine with G takes f2 check. This should be at least equal. This position. If rook takes f2, e3, and here, queen e5, that's a dangerous pass pawn. The c4 pawn is tied down. So what does white do? This position should be absolutely fine. Black's definitely got enough for at least equality. But g takes h2 check was played, and things are starting to go wrong now. After queen e5 for black, rook e1, that pawn is very, very vulnerable. Yeah, this pawn on h2 is not that helpful. Although this bishop seems dead, yeah, there's problems here. And in fact, also, black has potential, no heir for the king here in the background. This back row could potentially be quite vulnerable. We see rook d2, and now rook takes e4. The queen holds d1, so this is afforded. Yeah, so we have... this is an interesting move, rook takes e4. If queen c8 check, bishop d8, this is also possible to play like this, taking out b7 with advantage. Bishop c1, though, there's rook takes f2. And this isn't so clear. H5 gets some heir for the king so that there's no queen c8 mating under certain circumstances. And this is a small edge. But anyway, rook takes e4 is played. And we have queen c7. If rook d1 check, queen takes e4, bishop c1, this is just better for white. Yeah, things have gone wrong here. So queen c7. But now Capablanca is in the driving seat, and once he gets into that driving seat, he's super incisive. He plays a really incisive, cute maneuver here, which kind of disconnects things and reduces black's attacking potential. This is a really acute maneuver indeed. So for 100 points, what would you play in this position with white? So it seems as though we're kind of tied down. I mean, it's out of necessity in a way. We've got to do something with our bishop as well. So the bishop moves. Yeah, it just hits the rook with tempo. We have rook takes f2. Offering f4 is brilliant because now bishop f4 disconnects the queen from the pawn. And all of a sudden, actually, black's got king safety issues. Like when Capablanca was playing against Nimzovich, all of a sudden, when he was in the back position, all of a sudden there's king safety issues really linked. And this is in the middle game. There's king safety issues. Once Capablanca gets into the driving seat, it seems this is quite vicious now. If white had played trying to exploit the back row, this would be a very bad idea. Rook takes e7 because, well, there's no back row issue. In fact, there's rook f1 checkmate. Yeah, so that's the key thing. But with bishop f4, yeah, this same tactic now, this forcing move tactic, yes, for 5 points, what is the forcing move tactic? Why does it work so well? The forcing move tactic works very well here. Rook takes e7, trying to get access to c8 for a back row mate. Crushing. We have queen f8. So if queen takes, just to put that on the board, queen c8 check. The rook's also cut off from f8 there. So yes, that bishop f4 is a real disconnection move. So queen f8. And now the game ends in real style, tactical style here. There are moves which are sufficient. There's a number of moves which, white's a bishop up. There isn't too much to worry about. Okay, two pieces are attacked. We need some accuracy. especially if the bishop moves, then black's got f8 again to play with for defense. So, okay, what is a good move in this position, which is stunning for 100 points? And what is a plain vanilla move, if you want, for 100 points? So, plain vanilla or stunning. Okay, I'm about to show you the stunning move. And it shows, amazing tactical abilities. Queen takes g7 check. Capablanca is well aware, it seems, of the forcing move possibilities. So here, black resigns. If queen takes, we play rook e8 check. Now, if the queen goes to f8, then rook takes f8 check. And can you see a forcing move here, which is cute for 10 points? Yeah, we can actually play a super cute bishop h6 check, which protects the rook and hits f2. So king takes, rook takes f2. Now, also here, if we go through this again with queen g8, that's even worse. There's bishop e5, and that's actually, bishop e5 is mating, check. Bishop takes f6 is mate. So yes, a very, very interesting game. There are a number of angles in this game. And one has to say that also, even though Capablanca may have not known the opening theory, he's playing to the position. So he's playing the Cole system, how a professional collie player would play it. Against this particular move order, we don't play the routine bishop d3. Capablanca is absolutely right. He's dead on accuracy. This is echoing again. Fischer is saying Capablanca is playing this magic trick. He's well known for his endgames, but he plays so accurately in the middle game. Here we're saying in this game, he's actually played really accurately in the opening, d takes c5, but he did allow a little bit of counterplay in his continuation with e4. This is a little bit suspect. Black did have a bit of counterplay, and with counterplay we risk losing. We don't really want the opponents to have counterplay. There was counterplay, so I don't think Petrosian would be sleeping very well. Petrosian didn't like giving the opponents any counterplay. There was a bit of counterplay objectively, and that's why we have to show some of the variations here, that black did have a number of resources. But, f4 was pretty committal, and Capablanca managed to simplify in effect and then swing back. When he got into the driving seat, black's king safety all of a sudden became a major issue here. Yeah, black didn't have f for the king, and, it's black's king that's getting it. So, yeah, a real turnaround set of tactics there. Beautiful stuff. It does give insight into the reputation of Capablanca, but he's got so many strengths, not just in the middle game, but also opening finesses, which maybe at the time they're just not documented in these systems like the Collie system. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks so much.